A review of the Advocacy Coalition Framework. Hi, my name is Mariah Green. Today I will be reviewing the Advocacy Coalition Framework, or ACF. This content is from Chapter 4, Theories of the Policy Process by Wiebel and Sabatier. This chapter was written by Jenkins Smith, Norstad, Wiebel, and Ingold. The study of policy processes. The study of policy processes brings the focus on both the theoretical and practical significance of policy processes. These significances pose a number of questions dealing with the factors of policy change and the actors involved. Some questions are as follows. What factors explain policy change? To what extent is policy change affecting government agencies and procedures? To what extent are actors learning from their experiences? Does the behavior of actors directly or indirectly influence policy processes by advocating for change or maintenance? The answers to these questions provides insight into some themes of governance and politics. The Advocacy Coalition Framework, ACF, can help to answer some of the questions posed by policy processes. ACF was created in the early 80s by Paul Sabatier and Hank Jenkins Smith. The framework came about to address shortcomings in the policy process. The authors discuss four main reasons for the implementation of this framework. One, a need to develop an alternative policy process theory to overcome limitations of the stages of heuristic. Two, a need to provide theoretical insight into the role of the scientific and technical information and policy debates. Three, a need to shed light on ideological disagreement and policy conflicts. Four, a need to provide a comprehensive approach to understanding politics and policy change over time, exceeding traditional emphasis in political science or government institutions. The foundations of the ACF were also influenced by debates and the philosophical and the philosoph the foundations of the ACF were also influenced by debates and the philosophy of science that were still prominent in the 70s and 80s. Key contributions to the framework. An example of some of the philosophical influences of the ACF are found in Imre Lakato's 1970 theory of hardcore and Thomas Kuhn's 1962 notion of scientific revolutions and paradigm shifts. Lakatos observed that scientific theories can be described as consisting of a hard core of unchanging and largely axiomatic propositions surrounded by a predictive belt of an auxiliary hypothesis that can be adjusted or rejected in response to falsifiable evidence. Essentially, these findings created the premise for ACF's central belief theories, or hardcore, surrounded by hypotheses, the belt, used to effectively translate core beliefs into policy. A second important contribution was drawn from Lakato's related proposition regarding progressive problem shift, or the idea that theoretical adjustments address counter evidence and add new empirical context, exceeding the reach theory. Due to this, defense or expansion of a theory needs to be progressive to be considered scientifically legitimate. For Sabatier and Jenkins Smith, the ACF characterized such growth. Journal publications of the ACF was another example of the growth and contributions made to the framework. With each new publication, applications of the framework slowly accumulated. Summary of the ACF as a framework. The ACF has become one of the most utilized frameworks of the policy process. The book cites that the purpose of a framework is to provide a shared research platform that enables analysts to work together in describing, explaining, and sometimes predicting phenomenon within and across different contexts. The components of a framework include assumptions, description of the scope, or the questions the framework is hoping to answer, and the establishment of concept categories and general relations. One of the most important aspects of a framework is the common vocabulary it lends to a policy area. In today's presentation, we will discuss all of these components as they relate to advocacy coalitions. Policy subsystems. Policy subsystems are the primary unit of analysis for understanding policy processes. Policy subsystems are defined by a policy topic, territorial scope, and the actors directly or indirectly influencing policy subsystem affairs. Policy subsystems are defined by several properties that are critical to understanding the ACF. 1. Subsystems contain a large set of components that interact in non-trivial ways to produce outputs and outcomes. 2. Subsystems distinguish the integrated and non-integrated actors on a given policy topic. 3. Subsystems, or policy subsystems, are semi-independent but overlap with other subsystems. The text uses the example of an energy policy subsystem in Colorado overlapping with a food policy subsystem in the same state. 4. Policy subsystems often provide some authority or potential for authority. 5. Policy subsystems undergo periods of stasis, incremental change, and major change. Subsystem actors. The set of subsystem actors include any person regularly attempting to influence subsystem affairs. Subsystem actors are heavily influenced by Helco's 1978 theory, stating that the depiction of subsystem actors expands beyond traditional interpretation of policy process. Subsystems are affected by any actor directly or indirectly influencing subsystem affairs. The chapter leads us to understand that 1. Individuals are boundedly rational with limited ability to process stimuli, or motivated by belief systems and prone to experience the devil shift. And 2, the concept of modified individualism. It's here that the ACF's conception of individuals derives from the ideal that change in the world is primarily driven by people and not organizations. Assumptions. The ACF's assumptions are as follows. Individuals are motivated instrumentally by goals, but are often unclear how to achieve those goals, and thusly are limited to their cognitive abilities. This limitation makes individuals simplify the world through their belief systems. Policy actors have a three-tiered belief system structure. Deep core beliefs are fundamental normative values and ontological axioms that are not policy specific and can be applicable to multiple policy subsystems. Cultural theory helps us to understand deep core beliefs. Policy core beliefs are bound by scope and topic to the policy subsystem and have territorial and topical components. Policy core beliefs can be normative and empirical. Secondary beliefs deal with a subset of the policy subsystem. Essentially, secondary beliefs identify the means to achieve the goals and outcomes considered in the policy core beliefs. This tier considers the means by which desired outcomes are accomplished. The authors allude to prospect theory, stating that remembering losses and the tendency to filter and assimilate stimuli through belief systems result in the devil shift, also included in the assumption. The shift results in a non-collaborative attitude, growing mistrust, conflict, and the obstruction of effective policy solutions. The authors resolve that the more effective approach to organizing subsystems and actors is by grouping and analyzing actors by coalitions. Causal theory and analyst. Causal theory refers to the sequence of steps, a linking of anticipated events or desired procedures describing the reasoning for achieving outputs and outcomes of a public theory. This theory informs us that analysts applying the ACF should interpret policies just as the actions or inactions of government, as well as the translations of belief systems as manifested in given areas. This interpretation provides insight into why coalition actors advocate so intently over time and how they interpret public policies. The authors note that in order to better understand policy processes, it is important to understand how scientific and technical explanations are integrated into belief systems. Researchers are recommended to adopt a long term time perspective of about 10 plus years to understand the policy processes and change. While 10 years is not a magic number to understand the framework, the general point of this assumption is to understand that public policy requires focusing on temporal processes that characterize public policy over time.